I'm Reverend Dr. Jeffrey Goodine, pastor of Church on Wheels Spoken Word out of Deltona, Florida. And this is another edition of not morning prayer, another edition of Bible Study 2025. Today, we got some technical difficulties, something we're trying out. So we're trying out our Zoom tonight. So we're going to try to see, we're going to make this thing work. Tonight was just the first night, and I know I'm on Zoom because I can see myself. But if anybody tuning in, whether or not they can hear, I know they can see, and we're going to try to figure out how to get this done where I could be close enough to let people in and still, do all of the stuff that I usually do. But anyway, that's neither here nor there tonight, but we're trying something out tonight. Thank you all for tuning in tonight. Thank you all for coming. Those of you who came, thank you all for not thinking of robbery to take time out of your busy schedules to be with us this evening. Those of you that are tuning in on the airways, you can like us on YouTube at Pastor Jeffrey Goodine. Subscribe, hit the bell to be notified. Say if I get so many subscriptions and so many likes, then something happens. So if you're seeing this on YouTube, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, so you can subscribe to the channel. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on our Facebook group page, Church on Wheels, Let the Good News Roll. Facebook Live, I'm Jeffrey Goodine. X, which is formerly Twitter, at Goodine Jeffrey. Instagram, Goodine Jeffrey. And Clubhouse, Church on Wheels Ministry. Thank you all for tuning in. Tonight we are continuing in John, the book of John, in our Bible study in the book of John. Tonight we're going to be doing John chapter 9. And this one is a little more to the point, as I would say, more to the point of our ideology sometime. And the title tonight is Two Kinds of Blindness. I don't know why I keep forgetting this. Send me an email, pastorjeffreygoodine@gmail.com. That's pastorjeffreygoodine@gmail.com. I'll add you to the list, and you will get a copy of a handout so that you can follow along with us in Bible study. pastorjeffreygoodine@gmail.com. That's pastorjeffreygoodine@gmail.com, so that you can follow along with us in Bible study. So tonight it is two kinds of blindness. Two kinds of blindness. I put physical blindness and spiritual blindness. And we're going to focus on John chapter 9 and verse 25, where, the guy said, I don't know whether he's a sinner, but I know this, I was blind, but now I can see. So I want you to hold on to that. And let's go into the scripture tonight. John chapter 1, and I'm doing King James Version tonight. John chapter 1. And we're starting at verse 1, and I want you to see something here. And as Jesus passed by, he saw a man which was blind from birth. And his disciples asked him, saying, Master, who did sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Now, I want you to hold on to that for a minute, because in disabilities, we tend to put blame as to why this person is like this. They do it from birth, or he was disabled from birth. Now, Not that something else caused it, but he was from birth. So they asked the question, did he sin or his parents for him to be born disabled? You know, when people are born disabled in this life, I mean, who do we try to blame? You know, a lot of times we blame the doctor, you know, we blame the hospital, we blame it on drugs, we blame it on alcohol, we blame it on smoking, you know, anything that you know, I'm just saying. Well, here is an instance in the Bible that they came across a man that was born blind, that was blind from birth. Now he was blind from birth. So the disciples wanted to know what, in other words, they're asking Jesus, who's at fault here? Is it him or is it his parents? Now, think of it this way. If he was blind from birth, it couldn't have been nothing he did. So it would have to be on the parents if we look at it from that perspective. So, in the handout, Jesus and his disciples encountered a man who had been blind his entire life. The disciples asked the Lord, why was this man born blind? Was it because of his own sins or his parents' sin? And you see that in verse 2. That may seem like an odd question about someone who had been blind since birth. Now here's the thing. Some Jewish people believe that it was possible for unborn babies to sin in the womb. Now, okay, let's put it this way. If they believe that, then how could he have done in our way, in our lives, in our everyday life, what could an unborn baby do in the womb that we would consider sinful behavior? Now, I want you to think about that for a minute. What is it that an unborn baby in the womb can do to consider it sinful? So they would be affected when they're born. I don't know. But they say some Jews believe that it is possible. I don't know how, I don't know, but it says possible for unborn babies to sin in the womb. So that would prompt that question. Whatever prompted that question for the disciples, the man's blindness was an abstract theological puzzle. Now, abstract theological puzzle. Think about it. He's born from birth blind. So while we are equating his blindness with some kind of a sinful nature. So now, can he do something in the womb to cause that to be a sinful behavior? So that's the theological puzzle. Is he at fault or is the parents at fault? Now, the disciples, if you think about it, they had no real compassion for him. They lacked humility, empathy, and concern. Now, when you see this, all they did was ask Jesus, what was his position? Did he sin or did the parents sin? Now, I don't know. But I can tell you this, if that's something that people believe, then I can't answer that. I just can't answer that. Now, if you look at verse 3, Jesus answered, neither has this man sinned nor his parents, but that the works of God should be made manifest in him. I must work the works of him that sent me while it is day. The night cometh when no man can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. Now here Jesus said, neither him nor they. So this affliction is an opportunity for you to see God's work. Now, the opportunity to see God's work. Now we see people today in our life that are disabled. You know, sometimes we're more worried about that than they are. They're fine. They have accepted it. We're the ones that have not accepted it yet. We're the ones that haven't accepted it. But a lot of times, you know, they have. It's just that we feel one way, but then you should see that God's plan, his works, is manifested. Jesus had compassion. This is number 2. He explained that the man's blindness wasn't the result of his or her parents' sin. In fact, the man's blindness gave God an opportunity to work in his life in a way that sighted people would never experience. We got our sight. But here, this ailment gave God an opportunity to manifest his works. An opportunity. Now, all of our downfalls and things of that nature, our heartaches, whatever it is we go through, it is an opportunity to see God's work. It's an opportunity. Every bad thing that comes into your life is not necessarily for you. It could be an opportunity for God to show you his works. And all of us have been there. You know, we've been back against the wall, didn't know what to do, the worst situation in our lives, and then he came through. That was an opportunity for him to manifest his work. Now, I put this in here to show a point. If you turn to 2 Corinthians chapter 12, the Apostle Paul makes a similar point in 2 Corinthians chapter 12. Paul had some kind of disability or affliction that hindered his work. He called it a thorn in my flesh. 3 times he asked God to remove it from him. 3 times God said no. My grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. So, if I'm just kind of paraphrasing that. But think about it. When Paul was asking God to remove this thorn in the flesh, remove this ailment from me, remove this. And God said, no, my grace is sufficient. In fact, you will see my power in your weakness. He said, you will see my power in your weakness. So my grace is sufficient. That thorn in your side, that what you thinking is a thorn in your side, you noticing that what Paul looked at, you never stopped spreading my word. I always gave you the strength. Even when you were being beaten and thrown in jail and all of that, I gave you strength. So I manifest in your weakness. See, God manifests in our weakness. You know, we can't see it because we too busy worrying about stuff that we ain't got no control over. So Paul went to the same thing. Our flaws and weaknesses can bring us closer to God if we look at them from the right perspective. The right perspective. The downfall of us is that we look sometimes at our weaknesses as a weakness, a flaw. But it's an opportunity for God to work in your life. You done been there. You done been there, done that, got the t-shirt to show. You done been there. You know what he can do. But yet, every time we get in a tough situation, we don't believe that he hears us. So we don't go to him at the beginning. We go to him at the end. After our heartache, headache, and all of that. When we could have turned it over to him from the beginning, and all of that time that we wasted. So, our flaws and weaknesses can bring us closer to God if we look at them from the right perspective. They remind us that we need him. They encourage us to depend on him. Our weaknesses and our flaws cause us, encourage us to depend on him. That's what they do. Our shortcomings encourage us to depend on him. I guess. I mean, what are you going to do when your back's against the wall, as they say? When you're between a rock and a hard place? I mean, what are you going to do? Do you know when you call on him? You know what? Think about it. When you were in between your rock and a hard place, did you call Pastor Goodine? I hope not. Because I'm probably between a rock and a hard place too. But I know that both of us can call on him and he'll answer us. Now, verse 6, when he had thus spoken, he spat on the ground and made a clay of spittle. He anointed the eyes of the blind man with the clay and said unto him, Go, wash in the pool of Siloam, which is by interpretation sent. He went his way therefore and washed and came seeing. So Jesus showed the power of God in a man's life in a hands-on way. The power of God in a hands-on way. Now think about it for a minute. You know, he spat on the ground, made a little thing of clay, and he rubbed it on his eyes. Now, I can also tell you this. If we look at that from our perspective, you're not putting that on me. You're not putting that on me. You spitting on the ground, and no, you're not putting that on me.
That's like spitting in my eye.
Yeah, you're not putting that on me. But in your deepest and darkest hour, you'd be surprised at what you'll do. Because I always say, be careful how you treat people. Because one day, they might have to spit down your throat to save your life. And my mom always told me that. You never know. You never know. So here, Jesus had to make the clay with the spittle and rubbed it on his eyes and said, Go down to the pool of Siloam and wash. And he did. And he came away. The Bible says he came away seeing. Came away seeing. The man's blindness wasn't an abstract theological concept to Jesus. He spat on the ground, made mud with his saliva, and rubbed it on the man's eye. He told him to wash off the mud in the pool of Siloam. When the man did, he could see. The light of the world led the man out of his literal darkness. That's what we call. Now remember, I put at the beginning, two types of darkness. You got a physical darkness and you got spiritual darkness. Now, I can tell you this. It could be high noon. And some people are in darkness. Even though it's bright outside, some people are in darkness. And then on the flip side of that, no matter how dark it is, some people are in the light. And that light is Jesus. No matter how dark it is outside, Jesus is the light. Jesus is the light. Now, here we go, and if you want to think what happened. In verse 8, the neighbors therefore, and they which before had seen him that he was blind, said, is not this he that sat and begged? Some said, this is he. Others said, he is like him. But he said, I am he. Therefore said unto him, how were thine eyes opened? He answered and said, a man that is called Jesus made clay and anointed my eyes and said unto me, go to the pool of Siloam and wash. And I went and washed, and I received my sight. He told them it was Jesus. You know what? You tell people too, it was Jesus. When things happen in your life, you tell them it was Jesus. Now, whether they believe you or not, it's almost irrelevant. I said almost irrelevant. It's not whether they believe it or not. You're telling them. You didn't ask them, was it Jesus? You told them it was Jesus. And so he told them that this man now called Jesus made clay, anointed my eyes, and he told me to go wash. And when I washed, I got my sight. Then verse 12 said, they said unto him, where is he? He said, I know not. Now we know where Jesus is, but he didn't, because physically Jesus left. When he went to the pool to wash, Jesus went about his way. See, when Jesus anoints us, when Jesus blesses us, we go our way. And then now if somebody say, well, where's the Jesus that saved you? You know we can tell them? Right where you left him. You heard about Jesus. You know who he is. But do you believe in him? Do you believe him? He right where you left him. That's where he is. Right where you left him. So, now here comes the good part. Here comes the good part. Verse 13, it brought to the Pharisees him that aforetime was blind. And it was the Sabbath day when Jesus made the clay and opened his eye. Now, we back to that again. He did something on the Sabbath day. Now they're really up in arms. Remember before, when he healed the man on the Sabbath day, this was one. The one that was crippled and couldn't walk. And he went to the pool, but he couldn't get in. Because every time he go to get in the pool, someone would step over him. He said he had nobody to put him in the pool. Then Jesus healed him. Told him, get up, carry your mat. They got mad at Jesus. Why? Because he did it on the Sabbath. Well, here's another instance where Jesus did something on the Sabbath. It says, and it was the Sabbath day when Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes. Then again, the Pharisees also asked him how he had received his sight. He said unto them, he put clay upon my eyes, and I washed and do see. Therefore said some of the Pharisees, this man is not of God, because he keepeth not the Sabbath day. Others said, how can a man that is a sinner do such miracles? Now they begin the Pharisees now begin to disagree. Because some say, this man is a sinner because he don't keep the Sabbath. This man is not of God. He don't keep the Sabbath. But then the other would say, well, wait a minute. Wait a minute. If this man, how can this man do these miracles if he's a sinner? So you got the Pharisees now disagreeing. They said, therefore, some of the Pharisees, this man is not of God because he keepeth not the Sabbath. Others said, how can a man that is a sinner do such miracles? So they call him a sinner. But the others said, wait a minute, how can a sinner do miracles like this that we're seeing? This is the second miracle they saw. This is the second. Let's just say we saw at the pool and now here. So that's two they saw. And now said, and there was a division among them. They say unto the blind man again, what sayest thou of him that he opened thine eyes? He said, he is a prophet. Now he believed. He believed. He believed. He believed. Verse 18, but the Jews did not believe concerning him that he had been blind and received his sight until they called the parents of him that had received his sight. Now, they're going on and saying, well, he wasn't blind at all. Now, come on. Now, you know they know who that was. Everybody knew who that was. Now you're going to say that he wasn't blind at all. So then they called the parents. They called the parents. They didn't believe it. They didn't want to believe it. Let me put it that way. They didn't want to believe it. So they called the parents. And the parents in 19, and they asked them saying, is this your son, who ye say was born blind? How then doeth he now see? His parents answered them and said, we know that this is our son, and that he was born blind. But by what means he now seeth, we know not, or who hath opened his eyes. We know not. We don't know who done it. They weren't there. He is of age. Ask him. He shall speak for himself. Parents said, wait a minute. We don't know. We heard about, but we don't see him as Jesus guy. We heard about him, but we haven't seen his works. But this right here, we see. Now, he said, they're saying, think about it. They said, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. Ask him. He's of age. Let him listen to what he says. Now you think about it. When Jesus does something in your life, and people ask you, well, who did it? You say Jesus. Now, whether they believe it or not is irrelevant. But you can speak for yourself. You know the situation that you're in. They don't. You know the situation that you're in. And the parents say, look, you ask him. We don't know. We don't know. We don't know. And think about it. Can somebody else tell you about your blessing? Can anybody tell you about your blessing? No. They tell you about their blessing. They don't ask you. They tell you. Verse 22 says, these words spake his parents because they feared for the Jews. For the Jews had agreed already that if any man did confess that he was Christ, he shall be put out of the synagogue. Therefore said his parents, he's of age, ask him. Now, they've come along. That's why I told you, they heard about this Jesus. But they say, if anybody thinks or feels that he is the Christ, we're going to put you out of the synagogue. We're going to put you out of church. Does that sound familiar in today's time? If you don't agree with what they're going with, they put you out of church. They're going with Jesus is not the Christ. He's not the Savior. So if anybody believes that, we're putting you out of church. We're putting you out. We're putting you out. I guess. I guess. I don't know. I don't know. So they would put them out the church if they did. Now put here, you could probably guess on which day of the week the healing occurred, the Sabbath. When the Jewish leaders heard about it, they were again outraged. How dare Jesus ignore their religious rules to change someone's life forever by giving him the ability to see for the first time? Remember, they just mad because what? He did it on the Sabbath. They're not worried, they're not rejoicing that the man got his sight. See, they're not rejoicing that you got your blessing. They're mad because it didn't come through them. You didn't ask them. You didn't ask them. You didn't ask them. Some Pharisees argue that Jesus couldn't possibly have been sent by God because he worked on the Sabbath. The man may have been healed of his physical blindness, but their spiritual blindness was still a huge obstacle. Other Pharisees rightly argued that an ordinary sinner couldn't perform such a miraculous healing. And guess what? They were all against it. They even went and got the man's parents and say, now, was he really blind from birth? Was he really blind from birth? Parents say, yeah, but I don't know who opened his eyes, but whoever opened his eyes, they did. But they didn't profess that he was the Christ, because if they did, they would have put him out of the synagogue. And number 4, things got so absurd that the religious leaders sent for the man's parents and tried to get them to admit that their son hadn't been blind at all. Trying to get them to admit it. The parents carefully avoided the matter. They have been told that anyone who even suggested that Jesus was the Messiah would be kicked out of the synagogue. So you see, kicked out of the synagogue. So they said, you ask him. We don't know. He's of age. Let him speak for himself. Now verse 24. Then again called the man that was blind and said unto him, give God the praise. We know that this man is a sinner. He answered and said, whether he be a sinner or no, I know not. One thing I know, that whereas I was blind, now I see. So I don't know if he's a sinner or not. But there's one thing I can tell you, is that I was blind, but now I see. So you can do with that any way you won't. Because if you go to verse 26, they said unto him again, what did he to thee? How opened he thine eyes? He answered them, I have told you already, and ye did not hear. Wherefore would ye hear it again? Will ye also be his disciples? And he asked the question, you see the miracles, will you be his disciple? Because he's kind of almost saying, at least I am. I am. And then he goes on to say that, I don't know what y'all saying, but I can tell you this. You could be mad all you want, but I can tell you this. I don't know where he come from. All I know is he opened my eyes. He opened my eyes. I was blind, physically blind, but now I see. So see, instead of us being physically blind, we're spiritually blind. And when that changed, we know it was Jesus. It was Jesus. It said the leaders again sent for the formerly blind, tried to get him to admit that he had been healed by an ordinary sinner, not the Messiah. Now, think about this. You called him a sinner, so that would make him ordinary like everybody else, but yet he performed miracles. Yet he performed miracles. They seen two miracles that they couldn't explain. Both of them happened on the Sabbath. The guy at the pool, when he told him to get up, he pick up his mat and go. This is the guy that was blind, and then he put the spittle of clay on his eye and told him to go to the pool and wash. But yet they call him a sinner because they didn't want to believe. Why? They try to use the Sabbath or doing something on the Sabbath against him, holding on to their ideologies. Now, he said, and if you look in verse 33, it says, if this man were not of God, he could do nothing. If the man were not from God, he couldn't have done it. He had to be of God. And this outraged religious leaders, and guess what they did? Threw him out of the synagogue. Threw him out of the church. Because he didn't believe like them. He tried to tell them that was Jesus. And he was like, I don't know. All I know is this man's name was Jesus, and he did this, and now I see. I was blind, but now I see. And you all trying to tell me that I wasn't blind? You got my parents down here trying to get them to say that I wasn't blind? And the parents kind of skirted around it because y'all had threatened that if anybody in the synagogue had any inkling that Jesus was the Messiah, we're going to throw you out the church. Don't that sound like stuff today? If you don't believe what these people believe, they throw you out the church. But this man said, I don't know if he's a sinner or not, but I can tell you this. I was blind, but now I see. So you can call him anything you want. But I know I was blind. And he told me to do something. He touched me. He healed me. He gave me my sight. And surely it could not have been an ordinary man. He had to be of God. So now when he says he's of God, then the leaders say that to be of God, he had to be the Messiah. And then they said, you gotta get out of the synagogue. Because in here, we do not profess, even in the thought pattern, that this man, this sinner, is Jesus, the Messiah. So they put him out of the church. They put him out of the church. I mean, synagogue. Let's not say the church because, well, yeah, they put him out of the church. And all he said was, I don't know if he is a sinner or not. But I can tell you this. I was blind, but now I see.
And they couldn't argue.
Yeah, they can't argue with that. And he said, this man got to be of God. He got to be. Because an ordinary man can't do that. And they put him out of the church. They put him out of the church. In verse 35, after they done cast him out of the church, Jesus heard that they had cast him out, and when he had found him, he said unto him, doest thou believe on the Son of God? He answered and said, who is he, Lord, that I might believe on him? See, even he had a question. He's like, wait a minute. I know you was sent by, I know you are of God. So who is this God? Who is this God? And Jesus said unto them, thou hast both seen him, and it is he that talketh with thee. He said, you've seen him. It is God talking to you. You see me, you see him. And he said, Lord, I believe. And he worshiped him. What does it take for you to believe? What does it take for you to accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior? Are you still in your spiritual blindness?
I was going to say that's people see a miracle. They know it wasn't anything that they did, but because they don't have a relationship with God, they don't connect it. They're saying something marvelous happened, but they don't give the credit to God because they don't have a relationship with Him. And I think us as Christians, that's where we come into play.
Mm-hmm.
We say that was, yes, it was a miracle, but that miracle was because of God. So you connect them to who He is, so they can build that relationship.
Right. And you, by you saying that, you know what? I'm going to tell you how. I'm going to tell you the next time you do this, when you say, something told me to go do that. What is that something? That's the Spirit. You say something told. See, you don't want to give the Spirit the credit because you ain't got no relationship with it. So you say something told me to do. No, that's the Spirit that told you to do this or to don't do this. You know, we say something told me to do it and I didn't do it. Something told me to don't do it, but I did it anyway. That's going against it. Then you say something told me to do it and I did it. Something told me not to do it and I didn't do it. And each one of those times you're happy. But when you hear, but you say something, you say, I don't know what it is. You know what it is. You know. It was a spirit. You know. But you try to say something. And that lets you know that you don't have the relationship that you think you got. Because if you say something, that's the Spirit talking to you. That's the Comforter talking to you. But you say, I don't know. Their unwillingness to see Jesus for who he really was clouded their judgment in practically every other area of their lives. Our whole life revolves around. Our hope is tied up in Jesus Christ. Our hope is tied up in Jesus. So we got to get out of this spiritual blindness. They couldn't see or admit the obvious. Their pride kept them in spiritual darkness. They had no interest in the light. Again, something told me, that's the Spirit talking to you. That's the light. Now the question for reflection. Have you ever been spiritually blind to something that later became clear? Yeah, you know. Yeah, go on and admit it. You ain't got to tell nobody. Just admit it to yourself. How did this change affect your faith? You know it did. You know it did. But you worried about what your friend gonna say. You worried about what they gonna say. You know what? They doing the same thing. They worried about what you gonna say. So go on and tell them so both of y'all can get on the same page. There are two kinds of blindness. There's physical blindness and there's spiritual blindness. And your physical blindness, your physical disability is an opportunity for God to show his works. And his works may not always be healing you of this disability. His work might be